Thank you very much for the floor, dear Madam Chair, dear First Chair of the Cont Committee, dear rapporteurs, members of Parliament and colleagues from the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to present the European Court of Auditors report on tackling radicalisation. I certainly do appreciate a swift debate at this joint committee shortly after the presentation of our report. Personally, I feel that this area or this report is not like any other. It's an area in which people's lives are affected, families are ruined. So allow me to start with expressing of sympathy with the member states and families affected. Now let me turn to the matter. I would perhaps start by saying that the national security, including the fight against terrorism, is of course a responsibility of member states, and even within the member states it proves to be very challenging because there are specific challenges and specific situations at very local levels. Therefore, bottom-up approach in this area is very, very important. The Commission's role is to support member states in their effort and to help to ensure that good practices are exchanged. The Commission adopted EU counterterrorism strategy in 2005 with 4 arms. Prevention arm to tackle the causes of radicalisation and recruitment into terrorism. This is an area on which we focus in our report. Second is protection arm to protect citizens and infrastructure through better security for borders, transport and critical infrastructure. Third one, pursue and investigate terrorists and bring them to justice. And final response to manage and minimise any consequences of a terrorist attack. Then in 2015, a European agenda on security was adopted with a special focus on prevention of radicalisation and the threat by foreign terrorist fighters. The EU action in this area is financed by various funds: Internal Security Fund, Horizon 2020, the Justice Programme, Erasmus+, and European Social Fund. Implementation of these funds is done by 8 DGs, Europol, Eurojust, and last but not least, member states. And as I said, we have in our audit focused on the prevention pillar of the Commission's strategy. In our audit scope, we have looked at the Commission's management and of its support to member states. First question, in the first area, we assessed the relevance and reflection of the member states' needs. We looked whether the Commission policy objectives and actions were designed in such a way to reflect member states' needs. Secondly, we looked at coordination of various funds and possible synergies. So, in other words, whether the Commission had the necessary procedures for coordinating its support. And thirdly, we looked at effectiveness of the assessment framework and value for money. So, in other words, whether the Commission had set up the necessary framework of indicators and reports to assess whether its policy is effective and offers value for money, and whether assessment of individual action measures is not only activity but also effectiveness. In our audit approach, we reviewed documentation, so we looked at policies, procedures, actions relating to the support for member states in addressing radicalisation. We had interviews with various DGs, run Centre of Excellence, EIU, at Europol and International Centre for Counter-Terrorism. At the same time, we launched a survey to counter-terrorist focal points sent to member states via permanent representations, and we had a response rate of 54%. 15 member states replied. And finally, a very useful exercise, we visited 2 member states, Belgium and France. I'd like to, of course, mention the conclusions of our report, which are, in general terms, positive. The Commission addressed the needs of member states, but as we usually add, from Court of Auditors, there is always scope for improvements, so we identified some shortfalls in coordination and evaluation. But all in all, the support to Member States is relevant and well designed. We present 3 recommendations. First one is to improve the framework for overall coordination and action addressing the radicalization. So in this area, due to the fact that there is various funds and none of these funds has it as a primary focus, it's very important to ensure coordination. Another option would be, of course, as will be presented by the rapporteur, there could be also a solution by simplification, but this is the dilemma which we leave up to the Commission to decide upon. Second recommendation is to increase practical support to practitioners and policy makers in Member States. We have identified in the report 2 areas, 2 examples where Member States' needs were not efficiently tackled. This is the role of mass media and the design and support to have efficient exit strategies for those radicalized. And finally, and unusually, the court has to look at the performance measurements, so we recommend to improve the framework for assessing results. Allow me to use the introduction from the court also to indicate what might be the future work of the court in the security area. This is, of course, an area in which we have to keep building our audit skills. It's not an easy area, even for us. So this time we have started with the preventive arm of the security policy, but we will continue to focus on this important area and the other pillars of the Commission's strategy. So later this year we plan to present a briefing paper on the cybersecurity. And within the annual working program 2019, we will look whether the EU information systems for internal security and are efficiently supporting the border controls. So at this stage, allow me to thank you for your attention, and together with the audit team, we are ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.